Time now for an in-depth look at the market news on this Monday, and for that I'm joined on the line by Dr. Jun-sok, professor of economics at the Catholic University of Korea. Professor Young, thank you for coming on today.
Happy to be here.
Well, stocks on Wall Street ended last week mixed. Some signs of improvement in the economy, but on the other hand, concerns over a second wave of the pandemic. Take us through the global markets.
Okay, well, the global market, for the most part, seemed to be in sort of a holding pattern, waiting for something to happen, whether it's something good or something bad. But most of the major countries' indices rose or fell slightly. There wasn't anything that was really very strong in terms of trends. Now, the United States, the Dow and S&P were slightly down at the end of the week. NASDAQ was slightly up. But if you look at the United States, the coronavirus is on the whole going up. It is rising fairly rapidly in 20 states. The global cases of coronavirus is also reaching a very high level. So there are still continuing nervousness about the coronavirus. And then the United States unemployment insurance, the government, the Congress had increased their funding during March at the beginning of the coronavirus crisis in the United States, but that is running out in July. So the unemployment insurance, as well as aid to various state governments and various programs, they may run out of funding in July, and they're not quite sure whether the Congress will be able to reinstate these programs. There are some opposition by some congressmen. So there's question on whether such active fiscal policy will be continued, and that, I think, is playing into this wait-and-see attitude. The same wait-and-see attitude we see in European stock markets. FTSE and Euro 20, they were up during the end of last week. That probably reflects recovering EU economy, but still not anything really outstanding. Hong Kong and Shanghai, after rising at the end of last week, it fell slightly today. Nikkei fell a bit slightly today. Again, holding pattern. Kospi and Kosdaq. Kospi fell slightly today, minus 0.68%. Kosdaq rose 1.3%. But still, again, like the other countries, it seems to be in a holding pattern.
Well, now we just heard that Korea's exports in the first 20 days of June were down from a year earlier by 7%, but you could say it's even lower when you take into account the number of working days during that period. What do you make of these figures, Professor Young?
Yeah, in terms of working days, exports actually fell by 16.2%, which is a very significant loss. But I think it's also significant that imports fell by 12.0%. Now, the recovery, at least on the domestic side, depends on how well the domestic consumption is revived. And sometimes import demand is used as a quick proxy to see what the domestic demand will be. And the fact that the imports fell by 12%, though some of that is probably because the price of crude oil that Korea imports fell. But the 12.0% fall in imports does seem to signal that Korean domestic demand will not be that strong either, and that means the Korean recovery might take longer than it was hoped. Now, on the export side, the automobiles fell by 36.7%. Petrochemicals fell by 40.9%. These are very significant. Automobile exports are Korea's second largest exports, and the fact that it is falling so quickly and so much means that on manufacturing we're going to see some significant problems unless the global economy recovers very quickly. Petrochemicals, minus 40.9%. That is partially due to prices, partially due to volume. And again, it'll be a significant hit for Korean manufacturing industries. As far as the countries are involved, exports to China did go up because they were obviously recovered from coronavirus, though they were having some problems in Beijing. So perhaps next few days, we'll see the exports to China maybe take a hit. But most of the other major regions for Korean exports, the United States, European Union, Vietnam, Japan, and Middle East, they mostly took double-digit hits from compared to last June. So the global economy still seems to be in the midst of very significant recession. One perhaps tiny good news is that trade surplus recovered to plus 494 million. Usually having a trade surplus or trade deficit for a month or two doesn't really matter, but here I think it is significant because if we continue to have a trade deficit, because the global financial market is in such a nervous state, having a trade deficit may hurt Korea's foreign investors' confidence in Korea, but the fact that we got back into a surplus, I think, will help foreign investors' confidence in Korea a lot.
All right, Professor Young, we're almost out of time, but real quick, what's coming up this week?
Okay, well, I think there are some statistics coming up, but I think the most interesting news that will be coming out is Samsung Lee Jae-yong, Vice Chairman, Prosecution Investigation Review Committee meeting. So we may be able to see how strong the government is going to prosecute the Vice Chairman of Samsung Corporation. And then we have the Bank of Korea Monetary Policy Committee meeting. They're probably not going to touch the interest rate, but we want to see what kind of alternate policies that they may come up with, how creative they will be to try to get Korea out of the doldrums.
Got it. All right, Professor Young, always great to have you on. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.